Your Excellency, appreciate you speaking to us on Africa Today.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
And I suppose the first place to start would be UK-South Africa trade relations. South Africa is the UK, as well as among the UK's top 30 trading partners. Where is that relationship at the moment?
So it's bounced back very strongly after COVID, which of course affected all of us economically. At the end of last year, the trade relationship between our countries was worth £10 billion or 200 billion rand. South Africa is worth 25% of our trade with the continent of Africa and is a major trading partner. And we're also a major investor. We have traditionally been the number one investor in South Africa. Currently the stock stands at about 400 billion rand, which is almost half of our investment in the whole of Africa. So it's a very significant trade and investment relationship, supporting jobs and prosperity in both countries.
Now we know that Cyril Ramaphosa was in the UK several months ago. Is this all part of the plan to increase trade, further relations between the two countries?
So the President's state visit to the United Kingdom in November last year, which was, I think, a hugely significant occasion. It was the first state visit hosted by His Majesty the King, and I think that sort of reflects the importance we place on our relationship with South Africa. And there were a number of strands to the visit, including discussions between the President and the King and the President and the Prime Minister on a whole range of topics. Trade and investment was a big part of it. We hosted a business roundtable with the President at Lancaster House as a significant part of the programme. But we also signed new agreements on health, science, education and skills, gender equality, and also on things like what we call minerals for future green technologies. So it was a very broad-based visit, really putting the relationship up in the spotlight and really building these the key strands of our partnership for the years to come.
Well, you raised something quite interesting there, Your Excellency, and that's around the agreements that were signed. I'd like to focus a little bit on health. We know that many African countries, South Africa included, struggled during COVID-19, and the allocation, if you will, global allocation of some resources around COVID-19. Does that seek to improve those relations or that process should another COVID-19, God forbid, occur?
So I think our health partnership, I mean, it's worth unpacking, so I'm glad you asked the question because I think there are a number of strands to it. Prior to COVID, we were doing a lot of work together on issues like TB and AIDS, antimicrobial resistance. It was a big theme. We also were working very closely with our companies here, with the South African government and the South African regulators around strengthening the South African healthcare system. COVID interrupted all of that, of course, as we focused on addressing the immediate. And as we come out of COVID, although of course it's still with us, I think what we want to do is we want to get back to those core issues. We want to keep focusing on how we strengthen the healthcare system here, including working with the government on delivering the National Health Insurance Scheme. But your point about pandemic preparedness is absolutely vital, and South Africa has played a leadership role on this at a global level. The President himself has played a leadership role. And so we want to make sure that's part of the discussion, working together in global fora to prepare for the next pandemic. I mean, I fear it's inevitable that there will be one, and we need to learn the lessons from the last one.
Well, something that's affecting the world in pandemic proportions is global warming. And at COP27, South Africa introduced the just energy transition. And a big part of that is South Africa's transition to renewable energy. And there was a lot of support, certainly from a lot of the Western countries who are largely responsible for global warming. Africa, as we know, has contributed something in the region of 3 to 4% of those challenges. What support is South Africa getting from the West, and in particular the UK?
So if we go back a COP to COP26 in Glasgow in November 2021, we launched with South Africa what's called the Just Energy Transition Partnership. And we as the UK, the US, France, Germany and the EU. And that was a very explicit demonstration of our intent to help South Africa deliver its own ambitions for, as you say, the just energy transition. And I think South Africa was moving in that direction for a number of reasons, including, I think, seizing the opportunity of its abundant renewable resources here, dealing with a very obvious crisis that they are dealing with in the energy sector in terms of moving to a sustainable electricity supply, which of course is crucial for wider economic security and wider economic growth here in South Africa. So The UK and our partners have positioned ourselves to help South Africa deliver that just energy transition. In Sharm el-Sheikh in November last year, as you say, what the South African government published was a just energy transition investment plan. And the UK and our partners will be a key part of delivering that. We're now working with the South African government on how they're going to implement that investment plan in a way that will not only allow us to lean into it, but also other governments who are interested in helping South Africa deliver in this area, the private sector, the philanthropic sector, the big multilateral development institutions like the World Bank and the AFDB. And I think this is a long-term project. And our commitment to it is long-term as well.
So you took us back to COP26, where the Just Energy Transition was launched. 2 years later, how much has physically been done? How much money has South Africa received? And the reason I ask is because global warming is not waiting for us to come up with plans and proposals and so on. It's happening. We've experienced it in KwaZulu-Natal, 2 consecutive floods that have absolutely devastated the province and caused an absolute catastrophe.
So again, there's a number of strands to this. We're not all waiting for one thing to happen, although I think the key sort of architecture that sits at the heart of this is this concept of the implementation of the investment plan, and that is for the South African government to set out how they want to do. We've seen the recent appointment of a new Minister for Electricity alongside the other ministries in this, so we're talking to our South African colleagues about what that means. But as I say, there are investments that are happening anyway, both within the JETP, but also outside the JETP, because the JETP is one sort of aspect of this, but there is a broader just energy transition focus, including, crucially, the just piece of this, and working with municipalities in Mpumalanga to ensure that there are jobs for people to move into if we're going to see them moving out of traditional jobs in the mining communities, for example. And then, as you say, the fact is we need to get on with this. The impacts are being felt now.
But let's talk about Southern Africa. Neighbours, Malawi just down the road literally are, and Mozambique have faced the onslaught of Cyclone Freddy, which has been absolutely devastating. What is the UK's position on assisting the rest of Africa around similar objectives?
I know that my colleagues in Malawi, Mozambique and other countries have moved very quickly along with other members of the international community to provide support and aid on the ground for those the devastating consequences that have been felt there. But also, we need to work on these issues together with these other countries, and we do. We have our own sort of versions of discussions with them around energy transition issues, climate impacts, biodiversity, etc. And those conversations will be particular to those countries.
Now let's go across to Rwanda, where the UK-Rwanda migration plan has faced severe criticism. But while it's been criticised, it also has many proponents of it. Briefly unpack for us what it means for the UK government, why they have come up with this plan, if you will.
So the Migration Economic Development Partnership, to give it its full name, I think is a strategic partnership between the UK and the Rwandan government. And a lot of the focus has been on the migration piece of it, but as I say, I think it's part of a broader strategic relationship that we are building. I mean, there's 2 points I would make. First of all, the challenges of illegal migration are real. A lot of countries are feeling them. I think we have been very clear that there is no single answer to this. The partnership we have signed with Rwanda needs to go alongside working across the world to address what are the drivers of migration, whether it's sources of conflict, sources of climate change. They are big drivers of migration, as we've seen, including in the continent of Africa. But also, understand what is it that motivates people to feel the need to try and to get to safe countries, where unfortunately we also feel they are being exploited by organised crime. They're being exploited by smugglers and traffickers. And so what we have said is we are looking to try and break that business model, and that is a key part of the partnership with Rwanda. As you say, it has its critics, but we believe that Rwanda is a safe country for people, and we also believe that Rwanda has a sophisticated approach to dealing with issues around migration and refugees, And that is just one part of how we want to break this broader business model that is leading people to take these incredible risks, and unfortunately too many people losing their lives in the process and being exploited.
Well, another area of migration is obviously has been a result of the Ukraine-Russia war, and with that the ICC has issued a warrant of arrest for Vladimir Putin. Right, Vladimir Putin will be attending the BRICS conference, the BRICS summit in August of this year in South Africa. This is potentially the second or third time that a sitting president has had a warrant of arrest issued against him. What is the UK's expectation of South Africa when Vladimir Putin sets his feet on its shores in August of this year?
Well, first of all, let's step back, if I may. We ever since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine just over a year ago, we have made our position very clear that we believe this is a clear breach of international law, it's a breach of the UN Charter. We have been very active in helping the people of Ukraine in terms of taking in large numbers of refugees into the UK, as have our European partners and others. We have also, very obviously, been very active in helping Ukraine exercise what we think is their totally legitimate right of self-defense. And we have consistently called for Vladimir Putin and Russia to stop the invasion of Ukraine. A number of people, we talk a lot to our colleagues here in South Africa around, what we need to see in terms of dialogue and diplomacy, but we are also very clear that you can't have dialogue and diplomacy while one country is attacking another. It's really that straightforward. We, in terms of the ICC, obviously, the decision was announced last week. We have long expressed our concern about the potential of breaches of human rights in Ukraine as a result of the very obvious attack on Ukraine's civilian population. So when the ICC warrant was issued, I don't think we were particularly surprised. It's interesting because Ukraine is not a member of the ICC, but they have allowed the ICC to exercise jurisdiction over these alleged crimes, because I think they feel that is a way of having them addressed, and they must be addressed. In terms of what happens around the BRICS summit, well, that is obviously a matter for the South African government, and they have said that they are looking at this very carefully, and I think we will talk to them about what that might mean. But let's see how this one plays out.
That doesn't really say much, and the reason I say that is because there is an expectation that South Africa, being a member of the ICC, will arrest Vladimir Putin, but the ramifications of a leader of a sovereign state being on your shores and you arresting him could be catastrophic.
So, the obligations on all of us as members of the ICC are clear, and as I say, South Africa has made clear, the warrant was only issued just recently, and they have said that they will need to consider carefully how they handle this.
If Vladimir Putin did go to the UK, would he be arrested there?
I'm pretty confident he would.
Your Excellency, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Africa Today.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure.